um, outline. So that is also good because that CHED prescribed outlines can serve as a common take-off point of what exactly should be contained, what exactly should be contained in review materials. So, so ngayon, for this session, as I have mentioned,
Hindi.
our,
Tinigil ko.
our
Kailangan ko
our focus is on the preparation of our faculty
sa ano nga, sa preparation ng review materials for licensure.
to write, develop the review materials with this as our learning outcome. So enable our faculty participants to develop, write the review materials which you will use in your online review session. So just so that we can situate our discussion this morning to the general to the whole thing as the holistic view of what we've been doing. So this is our course map, our course map. And during our sessions last year, somehow we touch on all these things on the surface, just so that we can have the idea of what exactly will be involved when we say that we will be doing our review sessions online. So nakalagay dito planning, development, and delivery. So if you're going to develop a course online, so this is the usual roadmap that we are going to take. So we start with the planning, with the development of the course, and of course with the delivery. So keep this in mind so that we can situate the activities that we will be doing in relation to the whole delivery of the review session online. Kung meron po kayong mga maiisip na mga tanong while I am discussing things, I may not be able to address them or answer them immediately, but you can put them in our chat box so that we can also discuss those questions, those clarifications later. There will be a short break in between. So that is also an opportunity for us to discuss our some points in my presentation. So ito yun, ano? So ayan, yung mga 3 phases. Okay? So let's go first. As I mentioned, our focus is on content development. Sorry. So our focus is on content development. And this is that portion in our course map. So getting started, we have to know our students, the learners who will be participating in the classes. And very importantly, we should know our purpose. What exactly is it? And for what reason are we doing this online classes? So when we are developing materials for the usual courses that we are teaching, we are using, and this is something that we've been recommending, the backwards design process. Okay, I think I mentioned this before, and you have heard of it before. That is starting with the end in mind. Okay, so that's why we start with the learning outcomes. Okay, so that's the usual recommendation. Now, what will make the licensure exam, this thing that we are planning to do, different different from this usual process of the backward design. So the thing that we are doing now is called the teaching to the test design process, which is more appropriate when we are teaching for licensure exam. And that's exactly what our specific purpose. And that's the reason why I still have this backward design process as my anchor, because basically we will be doing the same It's just that our starting point will be different. Okay, our starting point will be different. So we have to interchange. Before, we have to first look at our learning outcomes and then the assessment. Since we are, since we are conducting the review for the purpose of the licensure exam, then we make the assessment as our starting point. Okay? We make the assessment as our starting point because our goal, remember, know our purpose, know our students, know our purpose. Okay? So our starting point will be the assessment, the licensure exam itself. And from there, extrapolate the learning outcomes. So our working diagram will be this one, wherein assessment, thinking of the assessment will be the first thing, and then extrapolate the learning outcomes will be our second step. And then the learning activities and content, actually you can already interchange this, but what is important is all these components will have to be in perfect alignment. Will have to be in perfect alignment so that we can achieve our goal of increasing the chances of our reviewees to pass the licensure exam. That is why our anchor, our mindset is the assessment aspect or component of all these activities that we are doing. So if we extrapolate the learning outcomes and then we look at the content and the learning activities will give us the evidence that the learning outcomes are achieved in a way, and also to give our reviewees the opportunity to practice and to show that they have learned something. And of course, the content will have to be based on the assessment and the learning outcomes that we want to achieve. Okay, so again, this is our anchor. Now, the first question, as I have mentioned, is we look at the assessment. So what exactly is the knowledge level? And I think I have mentioned this before as something that we really need to consider. What exactly are the questions? What knowledge level or knowledge levels are being tested in the licensure exam? So dito, yung mga nakaranas ng kumuha ng licensure exam for agriculture, 'di ba? Especially among those who are part of the yung mga reviewers natin, pwede kayong mag-contribute. Pwede nyo sabihin na, it's at the remembering, understanding, or may mga questions then about creating something or evaluating something. So the usual guide that we have in assessing or in determining the knowledge level would be the Bloom's taxonomy, and it is shown here to provide us with some guide. When we say remembering, ito yung recall facts and basic concepts, understand, explain ideas or concepts, apply, use information in new situations, analyze, draw connections among ideas, evaluate, justify a stand or decision, and create, produce new or original work. So, titingnan natin, nasa ang level usually ang mga questions sa licensure exam. Okay? So i-recall natin 'yan para we will be guided on how what learning outcomes, again the knowledge level in terms of learning outcomes, which will now be the basis of the content and our review strategies. Okay. So yung ang unang tanong dito, are they at the lower order thinking exam questions? So demonstrate, surface learning, or declarative or procedural knowledge. So ito yung tatlo do sa Bloom's taxonomy. Yung tatlong nasa ibaba, ang tinatawag natin diyan is lower order thinking. So naandyan ba yung mga question sa licensure exam? Or are they at the higher order thinking? Meaningful or deep learning, go beyond textual material, extrapolated from textbooks, students' creativity, originality, and critical thinking. They are required at this level, more authentic, and represent types of performances required in the real world. So, yun naman yung tatlong nasa itaas. So, analyze, evaluate, and create. So ngayon, habang tayo ay nagdi-discuss, you may try again based on those who have experience taking the licensure exam, or you can even and I think I have mentioned this already in our previous sessions, pwede na tayong, pwede na nating i-determine yan. And in fact, I'm sure you already have some ideas on what exactly is the level of knowledge being tested in licensure examination. Okay, so after that, again, so once we have determined that, we now extrapolate our learning outcomes from the assessment. So as I have mentioned, the learning outcomes will guide us on what lessons or content to teach. So kung ito yung learning outcomes nila, ano dapat yung ituturo natin? 'Di ba? Anong content? And then paano natin ituturo? Paano natin ituturo? Kung ito yung hinihingi sa kanila, paano natin ituturo itong lesson natin para ma-achieve natin yung learning outcomes at masagot ng ating mga reviewees yung mga tanong sa licensure exam. Okay? So very important yan. And what learning activities should we design to provide that practice for the final assessment or the licensure exam? And provide us with the evidence, tayo, yung mga nagre-review, this should be reviewees, have achieved the learning outcome. Provide us with the evidence that the reviewees have achieved the learning outcome. So kailangan i-determine muna natin yung mga bagay na yon, learning outcomes, para masagutan nila yung assessment, ipasa nila yung assessment, and then from there, determine the lesson, determine how we are going to teach the lesson, and what learning activities should we develop to provide them with that practice and to provide them, di ba, sila rin, naintindihan ba nila, natutunan ba nila? So sila yon on the part of the reviewees, and then tayo, yung mga nagre-review, also provide us with the evidence na natuto sila, natutunan nila, or na-achieve nila yung learning outcome. So that's how important this setting of learning outcomes is. Again, this is just a review of what we have discussed partly during our first webinar session. Okay, so again, we will be guided by Bloom's taxonomy. So what exactly are the learning outcomes? So when we look or when we search the literature and when we read about learning outcomes, there's one bottom line there, and it is learning outcomes guide your course design. Okay, so learning outcomes are explicit statements that describe the specific knowledge, skills, or abilities reviewers or abilities for them to be able to demonstrate that they have completed the lesson. Okay? So use the Bloom's taxonomy to guide you in formulating your learning outcomes, keeping in mind the level of knowledge skills usually being tested in the licensure exam. Okay? So it is learning outcomes are our destination, the course destination, in terms of where are we going. And this will also answer the questions, how will I know when my students got there? Or what can I do to help them get there? So these are the key questions. When we design and when we write our review materials, these are the three questions. Where are we going? These are the learning outcomes. Again, the learning outcomes will enable our reviewees to pass the licensure exam. So the next question, how will I know that we got there? that the learners got there. So there should be the learning activities and the formative assessment. And then what can I do? We, the reviewers, what can we do to help them get there? So lessons, inputs, lectures, learning resources, even feedback as to how they are doing, how our learners are doing in terms of their, as evident by their learning activities and other performance related to the learning outcomes. So nandito na tayo. So when we sit down to write, okay? Susulat na tayo, i-develop na natin yung ating review materials. So alam na natin yung assessment, now we will be writing our learning outcomes. Okay? So in their basic form, learning outcomes are typically structured, and I think you are all familiar with this. So again, this is just a review. So usually we write our learning outcomes as something like this. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to, and then ano yung gusto nilang, ano yung pwedeng, dapat nilang magawa, di ba? Dapat nilang magawa at paano nila gagawin. Di ba? So, the verb generally refers to actions associated with the intended cognitive process. So, halimbawa ito, kung nasa ang level ng knowledge, so dapat ito yung titingnan natin. And then the object generally describes the knowledge that the students are expected to acquire or construct. So this is just one example, and I think we are all I can probably say that we can say that we are all guilty of this on how we praise, how we write our learning outcomes. So we usually said at the end of the course, the student should be able to know or to understand, di ba? This particular concept, for instance, but neither of which are directly observable or measurable. So paano natin malalaman na alam nga nila o naintindihan nila? So instead of saying know and understand, what about write, list, identify, analyze, construct, 'di ba? Yung makikita natin, or demonstrate a particular skill, 'di ba? So yung pwede nating makita, directly observable or measurable. In so doing, it will now be easy to assess whether they were able to achieve that particular learning outcome. So again, we go back to the assessment questions, to the licensure exam questions. So nasaan yung level of knowledge? Is it about remembering or writing, listing, identifying, di ba? Or even if it is a multiple choice question, there is analysis involved. Diba? Before they could analysis of a case, for instance, analyzing a case, analyzing a situation, or solving a problem which cannot be done by merely recalling. 'Di ba? Kailangan may practice yan, kailangan alam yung mga concepts. So solving a problem and then choosing the correct answer from the options listed. Kasi usually 'di ba multiple choice yung question, but before you can arrive at the correct answer, there has to be analysis or problem solving or creating something out of the givens, out of the situation that was described, 'di ba? So, yung pa rin yung level, yun yung level na kailangan nating intindihin at yun yung kailangan nating ilagay doon sa ating learning outcome. Okay? So that's writing about learning outcome. Okay? So, I happen to find this website, and it's from Canvas actually. There is this learning outcomes generator. So kung medyo nahihirapan tayo, if we find it difficult to minsan kasi nauubusan na tayo ng verb, nauubusan na tayo ng ano bang ilalagay natin, 'di ba? So again, if we go back to the level of knowledge, being required in a licensure exam, this learning outcomes generator can help us kung paano tayo magsusulat ng learning outcomes. So in here, and this is the site that we can consider. So it says here, get started. You can also try this. I have tried it myself. And then when you click the get started, dadalhin ka rito. So may sample dito. So what knowledge, skills, or attitudes do you want your students to learn and be able to display? If you will look at it, nakalagay dito, natutunan nila at kaya nilang ipakita na natutunan nila. So these are just some examples here. Photosynthesis, for instance, conjugate Spanish with the ER verbs, calculate a standard deviation. So these are just examples. So you can put your own there. You can type your what you want, what topic exactly. So knowledge, skills, or attitudes. So when you put what you want here, the knowledge level, skills, or attitudes that you want to see from your students after the lesson. So you click the next, and this is dito ka naman dadalhin ngayon. So like for instance, in my case, kanina sinabi ko, we always use the word know, understand. So what I did was put that verb there. Know what photosynthesis is. Kasi yun yung gusto kong maging learning outcome nila. Gusto ko malaman nila kung ano ang photosynthesis. So if you will note that know what photosynthesis is, that is my objective as a teacher. Gusto ko maintindihan nila, know what photosynthesis is. So, nilagay ko siya dyan, and then when I click next, ito yung lumabas. Ang nakalagay pa dito, which learning taxonomy would you like to use? Siyempre, I'm more familiar with Bloom's cognitive taxonomy. So I put there Bloom's. So andyan yung mga example actually. So nakalagay, remember, understand, apply, evaluate, create. So using Bloom's taxonomy, ano ba yung gusto kong learning outcome? So I click Bloom's taxonomy, and then it brought me here when I click next. So ano daw bang gusto kong level? Is it remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, or creating? So again, pipili tayo dyan. So titingnan natin, balik ulit tayo sa assessment, di ba? So at what level, at what knowledge level, yung hinihingi do sa licensure exam natin. So i-click natin yan. I-click natin yan. Applying ba? Analyzing ba? Or evaluating ba? So click one of them. And then when you click next, so ito yun. So I click create. Sabi ko create, dapat higher level thinking ito dapat, ano? So how do you want them to create in terms of knowing what photosynthesis is? So do you want them to create a plan, 'di ba? Formulate, 'di ba? So you can also type here, remix, generate, etc. So creating includes putting elements together. So may guide dito. Putting elements together to form a coherent, functional whole. So may guide, and you can also try doing this. And of course, if you're not, if that's not exactly what you want, but at least it can give you some ideas on what learning outcomes to put in the module, in the material that you will be writing. So again, you can try. You may want to try if you will find it difficult. Thinking of what verb to use or how are you going to write your learning outcomes. Okay? So ito yon. So plan. So ito, nung i-click ko siya, examples include completing hands-on activities, explaining case studies, discussing concepts in forums. So yeah, pwede kayong pumili rin dyan. Noong mga learning outcomes na pwede ninyong isulat. Okay? So some verbs which we can consider in writing our learning outcomes are these. So again, this is following Bloom's taxonomy. Following Bloom's taxonomy. So in terms of remember that lower level thinking. So identifying, retrieving a particular knowledge, listing them. In terms of understanding, interpreting, exemplifying, classifying, summarizing, comparing, etc. So hanggang sa create, no? Hanggang sa create, pwede tayong pumili dito. Pwede tayong choose, we can choose which verb will be most appropriate or relevant to that learning outcome that that we want for our students. Okay? Okay. So planning for content development. Okay, again, based on our learning outcomes, which we extrapolated from the assessment, we can have them at different levels. Okay, so we have to remember this. Have them at different levels. So we have at the program level, program outcomes. So we have learning outcome for the whole program review level. That's for agriculture. Lahat. Ang goal natin is for our students, our reviewees, to pass the licensure exam. And in order for them to do that, there should also be the core subject area level outcomes. Okay? So kung animal science, kung crop science 'yan, kung extension 'yan, ganyan. So kailangan meron din silang mga learning outcomes nila. 'Di ba? And there should also be the lesson level learning outcomes. So dito papasok yung ano yung dapat nilang matutunan, ano yung mga topics, ano yung mga lessons na content knowledge na dapat nilang ma-acquire, ma-review, di ba? Kasi ito yung usual na itinatanong doon sa licensure exam. So kailangan ma-identify natin yan, and that is a very important aspect when we plan for our content development. Okay? So, but what is important here is, again, there should be the perfect alignment of all these learning outcomes. Hindi po pwedeng yung learning outcome natin sa lesson ay hindi magko-contribute doon sa learning outcome for the whole subject area. Ba? So kailangan naka-anchor siya doon at naka-anchor yan doon sa gusto nating ma-achieve for the whole program, for the whole review program. Okay? So yeah, I think, okay, so let's have a break at this point. Just so that you can medyo tumayo muna kayo, and also you may also want to share some of your experiences in developing your course modules or materials for the courses that you are teaching now. Or if you have questions, kasi after this, after the break na 5 minutes, we will be going now into the details of writing your materials. So if you have some clarifications at this point, or you may need to stand up or a health break, so we can have 5 minutes for that. Okay, so I will stop sharing now and check what's written in our chat box. Okay, so it's 9:50, so we will resume our discussion at 9:55. So kung meron po kayong gustong i-share ngayon, tanong o yung mga gusto niyo, mga naranasan nyo in module development, and comparing to what we are discussing now, you can already you can already ask them now, but if that will be covered in my next slides. Okay din, sasagutin ko rin yung mamaya, but I can focus the discussion. So ang ano dito, I think you will also be provided, I think Philma can answer this. You will also be provided with the recording, of this session. Oo.
Jancy.
Ayan. So opo daw, po-providean kayo ng recording. So, kasi,
maybe, Jancy,
yes.
and maybe, generous ka naman eh. So, if we can have, again, a copy of the module, that would be very helpful sa ating mga SUCs. I think, in many of our sessions kasi, we find that the bottleneck is in terms of developing the learning outcomes. And we tend to really focus on the learning outcomes and forgetting that we still have the program learning outcomes and the course learning outcomes. And you always remind us that there should be a perfect alignment between and among these outcomes. But I think nandun yung difficulty. Even as kahit sa atin sa UPLB, kami challenge na malaki talaga yung paano nga ba mag-align itong mga ano, kasi yun nga ang tendency is just to focus on the learning outcomes na ano. So yun.
Lesson level. Ano? Oo.
Yes, Jancy.
So yes, I can so that you can also look at the even check the references that I have put here. But pero yun nga, ang importante kasi dito yung first step din na ma-identify natin yung assessment na ano. Kasi nga ang difference nito doon sa kapag ka nagde-develop tayo noong yung mga courses natin, di ba? Nagsisimula tayo sa learning outcomes at the program level. And then bumababa tayo hanggang sa ma-identify natin yung learning outcomes for each lesson. Ito, magsisimula tayo sa assessment. Kasi licensure exam. Licensure exam yung ginagawa natin. Oo. Nagre-review tayo. So assessment is already given. Naka-fix yung assessment. 'Di ba? Unlike in the usual course na nagsisimula tayo sa learning outcomes and then we develop assessment to determine whether we achieve the learning outcomes. Dito naman nagsisimula tayo kasi ang assessment is already given. So mula sa assessment, i-extrapolate naman natin yung learning outcome. So yun yung difference if you are developing a course or a material, if you are developing materials for the review session. Pero hindi naman siya masyadong nagkakalayo. The basic principles are still the same. Okay? So yeah. So yun yung main difference natin when we are doing it for a review class like this, like the one that we are preparing for, and if we are doing this for the usual courses that we are teaching. Kasi baka malito kayo kasi in so many webinar sessions, we always emphasize the backward design process. 'Di ba? Starting with the end in mind, so we start with the learning outcomes in mind. So the difference now is we are designing for a test, which is the licensure exam. So yun yung main difference. Nung the usual lecture, kahit kami, mga usual lecture namin, compared to what we are doing now. Okay? So, wala pang clarification at this point. So, again, yung learning outcomes generator can give us some ideas on how we can write our learning outcomes. And it's medyo maganda siyang i-try. Again, as I mentioned, I tried doing it. Just so na pag minsan kasi pag nagsusulat tayo, hirap na tayo mag-isip na, ano ba ilalagay ko dito? Kung itong gusto kong gawin nila, ano pa yung ilalagay ko? How am I going to write the learning outcomes with the proper verb? to put there which is measurable, observable, etc. So ito makakatulong sa atin sa pag-iisip kung ano yung pwede nating ilagay. Okay? So kung wala pong katanungan, we are now 271 in our Zoom space with participants from all over. I noted where you are coming from, and it's really all over the country represented here. So 255 attendees from different areas. So yeah, I will continue sharing my slides. Okay. So still, you may share your experiences you in developing your course materials. Kasi I know that you've been through this process when you were preparing for your courses during the first and second semester of this school year. So you can put them, you can write them in our chat box. Okay. So we are now at the second stage. So naplano na natin yung naplano na natin yung learning outcomes, identify na natin based on the assessment. So when we talk of ano bang magiging itsura nung isusulat natin? Ba ano magiging itsura niya? So I put here some two examples of paano yung naging output na UPOU when we were starting to develop our learning material. So I will stop sharing again just to show you the actual examples. So ito yung material. This is the college algebra. So this is in the form of a book. Nakabind siya, ganyan. May cover, hindi nga lang siya hardbound, pero kasi it will make it more para mas madaling bitbitin ng mga estudyante. So it's really like a book, the usual thing that we have. And then kung titingnan natin, so yan, So Unit 3, ganyan-ganyan, kasi this is volume 2 already of college algebra. So, sinulat siya. So, halimbawa dito, welcome to Unit 3, having learned the basic ideas of functions and graphs. So, may mga yung the things that I will be discussing as the feature of a module, nandito sa mga materials na to. So, this is for algebra. Ito na lang yung nakuha kong available na material dito sa bahay. Most of my modules are in the office since most of them are online. So this is the other one for communication. The blue one is hindi namin ito usually make available commercially. So kapag ka blue pa yung cover niya, these are just available for our students. But if it is using another cover na like this one, then itong mga ito usually we are also making available for sale. May cover na siya, may design na, etc. So ganun. So you may want to think of what your output will be also in this format. But note that we were producing this during the early years of UPOU, printed lahat. But this may still be relevant or appropriate considering the different context of our reviewees. Kung nahirapan sila mag-access sa internet, this can still be a format which we can consider as our output for this exercise that we are doing. So yan yung mga examples natin. So later I can further discuss that. Yan. So eto, ginawa ko kayo ng sarili nyong cover. You may want to, of course, kaya lang syempre, ang nagawan ko lang animal science, madali maghanap ng picture ng animal science. Gagawa sana ako para sa craft science, kinulang na ako ng oras. So the course pack for each of the course subject area can also look like this, no? May sarili kayong kulay, may sarili kayong cover, and inside, as what I had shown earlier, there can be module 1, module 2, module 3, and so on. And each module can correspond to a lesson, di ba? So therefore, you can have as many modules as there are lessons which you need to cover. Diba? Kung ilan yung lesson, depende sa learning outcomes. Depende sa learning outcomes, kung ilang lesson yung ma-identify ninyo, then meron kayong ganong kadaming modules. Okay? And each module can be assigned to a writer or two or more writers. Diba? So, pwedeng isa, pwedeng dalawa, diba? Depende dun sa expertise, depende dun sa topic na i-cover, ganyan. So, pwedeng ganon. Again, for each core subject area, several modules corresponding to a lesson, each module corresponding to a lesson, and each module can be assigned to a writer. So, ibig sabihin, hindi isa lang ang magsusulat. Especially in this context that we are reviewing, di ba? So may magko-contribute halimbawa dito sa animal science, merong eksperto sa nutrition, may eksperto sa production, may eksperto sa breeding, di ba? Same thing for the other subject area. So isipin nyo na ngayon kung paano gagawin. Sino-sino yung mga experts na yan na magsusulat, okay? But how do we determine? How do we determine what each module should contain? O sige, may module 1, may module 2, may module 3, and so on. Pero paano nga ba? So dito, the key or the recommendation is for us to chunk the content. So nakalagay dito, content chunking is king. Diba? So, wala lang, natuwa lang ako dito kasi content chunking, napakaganda ng rhyming niya. But then again, maganda, but at the same time, this is true. This is true because it will really help us. In managing the development of the content. Again, based on what learning outcomes do we want to accomplish. Diba? Kasi nandito na yung learning outcomes, nakita natin yung mga topics, nakita natin yung level of knowledge, therefore, i-determine na natin ano ba yung dapat ituro at paano ituro itong content na to so we can achieve the learning outcome. So paano natin to gagawin? Yan. So what exactly is chunking? This is the strategy of breaking up content into shorter, bite-sized pieces of information that are more manageable and easier to remember. Because people have a limited capacity in their short-term memory. So therefore, chunking is a useful technique for designing successful e-learning courses. Take note ha, this particular strategy is very important when we are designing for e-learning courses. So bakit? Kasi when we chunk our lessons, the content, in a face-to-face instruction, usually our basis is the duration of our class period. Isang oras at kalahati, ano ba ang pwede kong ituro sa isang oras? If all the events in instruction ay gagawin ko. Diba? For every meeting sa face-to-face. So, i-consider ko yon. So, yun yung basis ng chunking natin. Isang oras at kalahating oras, 3 oras. Diba? Yun yung basis natin. But in e-learning courses, we are more, we will consider more that limited capacity. So ano yun? Ano yung basihan? So yung chunking, hindi lang yung basta inisip or wala lang, nakatuwaan lang na chunking is king, di ba? Hindi ganon. May basihan yan, and that is what we can retain, the information that we can retain at any given time. So shorter, bite-sized pieces of information. Okay? So, ito yung basis niya. Sabi ni psychologist George Miller, who created the chunk concept in 1956, the short-term memory could only hold 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. So, yung mga key takeaways. 7 plus or minus 2. So, we can go from 5 up to 9 key takeaways at any given time. So ganun yung magiging basis natin in chunking. But what is also important here is that they should be able, yung connected, hindi fragmented yung information. Yung bang mabubuo pa rin nila yung concept for that particular lesson. So Miller further writes that the span of absolute judgment and the span of immediate memory impose severe limitations on the amount of information that we are able to receive, process, and remember. Actually, very, very interesting nga yung yung example na ibinigay dito. Sabi dun sa example, and you can also look at it in this site, ang sabi dito, that is the reason why, yun daw mga phone numbers, siguro yung mga kahenerasyon ko na landline pa yung ginagamit natin, the reason why yung mga phone numbers daw nung araw ay limited to up to 5 to 7 digits. So, pero ngayon 'di ba yung mga phone numbers natin, ilang digit ba yung phone numbers natin ngayon? Mobile phone number natin. Naka-chunk siya. Naka-chunk siya into 4 digits or 3. 'Di ba? So, 0917, 'di ba? May ganon, that's 4. And then to be followed by 3, 'di ba? 258 and then 4. Ganon. So, chinunk din niya into those easy to remember digits so that mas madali nating tandaan, gano, mas madali nating marirecite compared dun sa dire-diretso. Sometimes we still go back. Nasabi ko na ba yung number na yon? Parang ganyan. So, yun yung pinaka-practical application that I read when I was looking into this basis of chunking the lesson. So again, if we are going to look at the content, then this can be our guide in determining what should be contained in a particular module. Animal nutrition, for instance, napakalawak ng animal nutrition. Diba? Animal production, napakalawak din yan. So, paano mo pahahatiin yan? Yung sa nutrition, paano mo pahahatiin yan? In such a way that each module can correspond to a chunk of a lesson with this 7 plus or minus 2 bits or key takeaways. And that will now determine what should be contained in your module. Okay? What should be contained in your module and who can be assigned to write that particular module. Okay? So, yung pinaka-eksperto, pinakamagaling halimbawa dito sa aspetong ito, sa crop production for instance, breeding for instance. So, sino na yung pinaka-eksperto dyan? So, siya na yung pagsusulatin natin. Diba? Para, in terms of really looking at the content, which will be in perfect alignment with the learning outcomes, makikita natin kaagad. Again, it's not just a matter of writing it. The content should be aligned with our learning outcomes. Kasi syempre, ang tendency niyan, and this is something that I also realize, no? Ang tendency mo kasi sumulat ka na sumulat eh. Ang dami mo kasing gustong i-share. There's so many things that you want to share. Especially if you're really expert in the field. You want to share so many things. But then again, we have to limit ourselves with this chunking of information, and with the learning outcomes. So dito, in chunking our content, we will also be guided because we should be aligned with the learning outcomes. We will also be guided with must or should know. What are the information that our learners should know? And these are your learning outcomes. And what are the information that are nice to know? So we can also classify, diba? The learning outcomes will enable us to classify ano yung must know, at ano yung nice to know. Can I stop sharing now? Someone is raising. Yeah. So Elvira Salatan, nag-raise ng hand. Do you want to say something, ma'am? At this point? Hindi naman. Wala. Akala ko kasi may gusto magtanong eh. So, wala naman po. Okay, sige. So, I will continue. So, yon. So, as I've mentioned, the chunking and the learning outcomes will also help us in determining which information are must know for our students or reviewees and what information are nice to know. Maganda lang malaman, additional insights, 'di ba? Because that is an opportunity for learning. So we should always be aware of that. Para hindi tayo magkaroon ng tendency na baka magkaroon ng information overload din yung ating mga reviewees. Okay? So that's for the chunking. Okay. So, susulat na natin yung mga module natin, no? So again, balik tayo doon. Each module corresponds to a lesson and therefore, we will now look at the learning outcomes for the lesson or the module. So each module can represent a chunk of the lesson or a chunk of the content. So it should be a chunk of the content. Each module or lesson has its set of learning outcomes that will contribute to the attainment of the learning outcomes for the course subject area, and the content or lesson and learning activities will be informed by the learning outcomes. Mamaya, pagka mag-iisip na tayo ng pag-design ng learning activities, medyo marami rin tayong tips dyan. And ito talaga may mga tendency tayo mga teachers na wala lang magbigay ng kung ano nasa isip natin, ano? So ito yung mga dapat nating tandaan. When we are now chunking the lesson, the content into different lessons, and then which will be contained in the different modules that will comprise our material for our core subject area. Okay, so this is just an example for module identification. So this is the course that I am teaching now. It's a corporate social responsibility communication. And this is the set learning outcome for the course. That at the end of the course, I'm expecting my students to be able to prepare a plan, a CSR communication plan or program, implement it, as well as evaluate whether it is their own CSR communication program or the CSR communication program of other organizations. So, plan, implement, evaluate. So, yun yung gusto kong magawa nila. So, to achieve this, that particular outcome, ito yung inilagay ko na mga na mga objectives or specific learning outcomes for the course. So for them to be able to do that, kailangan alam nila what corporate social responsibility is. And I put here because I have noted, I have revised this as I continue to teach the course, that many of my students are connected or teaching in universities, etc. So I also included, and this was a part of the original course outline, I also included the university social responsibility. So articulate CSR communication, discuss the various CSR communication models, etc. Discuss the trends, issues, blah, blah, blah. And then from there, I chunk the content into this. So I have, ang unang ginawa ko, meron akong Unit 1, meron akong Unit 2, meron akong Unit 3, and so nag-chunk muna ako ng ganong kalalaki, no? Ng ganong kalalaki, units, and then under each unit are the lessons which are contained in each of these modules. So there are 8 modules. There are 8 modules here for the students, for the learners to be able to achieve this, and finally this final learning outcome for the course. So yan yung isang example. So meron ako for each module here, meron akong module guide na tinatawag. Okay? So, ayan na. So, meron na tayong na-assign na, no? Na-assign na sa ating lahat. Tigi-tigisa na tayo ng isusulat na module based on the chunking of the lesson. So, how are we now going to write? Paano na tayo susulat ngayon, diba? So, dito, we can be guided by Gagne's events of instruction. So, ito classic itong mga to, ha? Kanina, I discussed Bloom's taxonomy. Itong Gagne's events of instruction, classic din ito. And there were revisions, but of course, the basic structure is the same. So kung tayo mag-i-structure, ayan na, susulat na tayo ng module assigned to us, this is the recommended structure. And I think you will also find familiarity with these events in instruction because this is exactly what we are doing when we are conducting our face-to-face classes. So balikan nyo rin lang, go back to how you are teaching in the face-to-face classes, di ba? And then you can find the things that you are doing in your face-to-face classes in these events of instructions outlined here. So yung una, so the only difference now is instead of us talking or doing it by talking in front of our students, we will now be writing it. Okay? If what you want to produce is something like this, no? Yung katulad na ipinakita ko kanina na module, printed module. So, gain the attention of the students. So, introduction to the lesson, get the interest of the students. Yung bang, di ba, usually may introduction tayo na ginagawa. When we are, before we discuss the lesson, before we discuss a specific lesson, meron tayong konting introduction to gain the attention or to pick the interest of our students. Diba? Something like, we can say a practical application. A practical application of the concept. So, halimbawa, kanina photosynthesis yung example na ginawa ko doon sa learning outcomes generator. Especially din kahit sa mga bata, this is sa basic ed, very important ito. So halimbawa, have you ever wondered bakit ang mga puno ay may bunga? 'Di ba? Saan nanggagaling ang bunga ng mga puno? 'Di ba? So that yung madali silang makarelate at madali silang matitrigger yung kanilang pag-iisip. And that will make them appreciate the lesson because they already have the practical application of the knowledge that they will gain from the lesson that will be discussed. So kung titingnan natin yung review classes natin, that can again be considered, especially if the questions in the licensure exam will be in terms of authentic assessment. When we say authentic assessment, ito yung mga real life scenario, real life cases, yung mga nakikita nila. 'Di ba? So halimbawa, bakit ang dahon ng halaman ay naninilaw? Ano ang posibleng problema? Nakakita na ba kayo na ang halaman ay naninilaw ang dahon? Ano kaya ang posibleng problema at masosolve pa ba natin ang problema? 'Di ba? Ganyan. Or isang linggo mong hindi nadiligan yung halaman mo. O katulad nung nagme-major ako sa nandito ba yung mga teachers ko sa agronomy that time. So, halimbawa katulad namin, syempre yung mga estudyante, may katamarang taglay mga estudyante eh. So noon kami, nagbi-breed. Breeding kasi, plant breeding yung yung undergrad ko. So nag-aano kami ng mga halaman, nakalagay sa mga paso yung halaman. 'Di ba? So, ang gagawin namin, especially during weekends, mag-a-assign kami kung sino magdidilig ng halaman or every day kahit walang klase. Mag-a-assign kami kung sino dapat pupunta doon, mag-observe, etc., etc. So, syempre, mga estudyante, and I can say that I'm also guilty of that. May mga katamaran kaming taglay, malilimutan naming diligin, hanggang sa eto na, mamamatay na yung halaman, then all of a sudden, bubusan namin ng tubig, ganyan mabubuhay. What can be the explanation? 'Di ba? So yung mga gano'n na nakita mo in real life cases, how will you explain na eto na, malapit na, kito mo, lalaglag na yung mga dahon, pero nung dinilig mo, di ba, then yung wilting point na tinatawag, di ba? So may mga gano'n tayo na pwede nating makatch agad yung interest nung mga estudyante natin kasi nakikita nila. Ganyan. So bawa on yung isang lagi kong sinasite na example uh, sa in rural areas especially, although ngayon ang feeling ko bawal na to, yung nagsisiga sa ilalim ng puno ng kahoy, 'di ba? And then ang sabi ng mga matatanda, magpapabulaklak ng mangga or etc. What can be the explanation for that? Diba? What can be the explanation? Ito naririnig natin, but what can be the explanation? What can be the explanation for that? Diba? So we can trigger, catch the attention, and for all we know, baka I don't know, I haven't had the opportunity to take the licensure exam for agriculture, but there may be questions like that, which will now call on their their critical thinking, analysis of the situation. What principles, what concepts will apply for that particular situation? Ganon. Or bakit pagka nag-abono ka, naglagay ka ng konting fertilizer doon, kailangan didiligin mo or something, pero huwag mong didiligin na masyadong marami. Mga ganyan. So, may mga ganong cases tayo which we can use to gain the attention of our students. And then, of course, after that, after calling or getting their attention, we now inform them of the objectives, the learning outcomes. So, dito sa lesson na to, this is what we hope to achieve after our discussion. So, kailangan ma-discuss ninyo ito, mailista ninyo ang mga bagay na kailangan sa photosynthesis, di ba? Yung mga ganyan. So, even the whole process. So, like for instance, describe the whole process of photosynthesis. Diba? Ano yung mga elements that are needed? So, pwede mga ganon, no? So, kasama yan doon sa learning outcomes natin. Stimulate recall of prior learning. Kung meron na tayo mga na-discuss, na pwede nating yung bang foundation of the lesson that we are supposed to discuss, then we try to relate it to that. Katulad ng binasa ko kanina, do sa algebra. Kasi ito yung lesson nila, pero nagsimula siya ng, in the previous lesson, we have discussed this, blah, 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 blah. Ganyan. So try to recall a prior learning which will help them understand better the lesson that you are going to discuss. And then, you now present your lesson. I-present mo na yung lesson mo, yung input mo. I-discuss mo na ngayon yung particular lesson. Okay. The fifth step is providing learning guidance. Ipapakita natin sa kanila kung paano mas madaling matutunan, mas madaling intindihin. Pwede tayong magbigay ng examples, pwede nating i-demonstrate kung paano ginagamit itong mga concepts na ito. Diba? And then, illicit performance. Kakayanin nila o practice applying the concept. So sila naman yung paggagawin mo by asking them to perform learning activities. Pwedeng may seat work, etc. Pwede mo silang pag-explainin, pag-analyzin ng case, yung sila na yung gagawa. Matapos mong ipakita sa kanila kung paano gagawin. Diba? Provide feedback. So, ginawa nila yung learning activities, nakita mo, and then you have to provide feedback to them. So, halimbawa, sabi mo na, ito ay mali, baka dapat ganito ang ginawa mo. Ito mali yung assessment mo, you should look at the context, you should look at this particular component of the environment. So, ibibigay mo yung feedback. Again, we should consider that when we ask our students to do learning activities, two kinds of information are provided to us, or we are making available two kinds of information. One is the information for our students as to where they are in terms of learning the lesson. Naintindihan ko ba yung lesson? Ito yung kaya lagi nating sinasabi na ngayon na yung mga bata ay sa bahay nag-aaral. Tapos ang gumagawa ng kanilang mga learning activities ay yung mga nanay or kung sino man. Kung higher education yung pinag-uusapan natin, baka pinapagawa lang sa isang kaklase or whatever, whoever, 'di ba? So, ang lagi namin sinasabi dito, wala silang niloloko kundi yung sarili nila, 'di ba? Because instead of determining where they are, in terms of learning the lesson, hindi nila malalaman yon. And then tayo din, teacher, in terms of determining whether our students have learned the lesson, tama lahat yung isinubmit nila ng mga activities eh. Di ibig sabihin, alam na nila. Hindi ko nare-reviewin yan. Kasi alam na nila. Pero kung nakita natin na, oops, parang kalahati yata ng mga nagre-review sa akin, hindi nila nakuha tong na to hindi nila naintindihan yung concept, mali yung kanilang mga learning activities, then I can go back and explain again and try to see, kasi makikita mo naman doon kung alin yung hindi nila natutunan eh. Then pwede mong ulitin. Emphasize the key concepts that they should be learning. So that's why these learning activities and providing feedback after our students have performed the learning activities, it's a very important process. It's a very important process when it comes to designing our lesson. Okay, assess performance. If we want to have some more assessment, so kung meron ka mga exams na gusto mong ibigay, diba? So pwede mo pa rin gawin yon in addition to other learning activities. So you can have low-stake assessment or high-stake assessment. Again, this will help them prepare for the licensure exam, especially if we are going to simulate the kinds of questions that are usually given in the licensure exam. Aside from providing us with the important information, the feedback, the evidence of the learning of our students or the reviewees, we are also yung pinapractice na natin sila, yung ini-enculturate na natin sila in taking the licensure exam. Parang sinasimulate na natin eh, 'di ba? So para hindi na sila masyadong nervyusin kasi pag minsan yung nervyos ang nakakaano eh, nagme-mental block na sila, 'di ba? Pero for each opportunity that we have, that we can simulate the licensure exam in terms of assessing the learning of our reviewees, then we have to take that in terms of assessing the performance in that particular step, the assessing of performance. And of course, the last activity in the instruction is to enhance the retention and probably transfer to the next level of learning, etc. In here, we give summary, highlighting the key concepts of what they have to learn, what they have to remember, what they have to recall, as foundation of further learning. Okay? So again, kung tayo ay uupo at tayo magsusulat na ng module natin, nung naka-assign sa atin, these are the things which can serve, the steps which can guide us kung paano tayo magsisimula. I think you have experienced this as well, na it's so difficult to start. Paano ko ba ito sisimulan? Paano ko ba sisimulan ang pagsusulat nito? And in most cases, doon tayo nabablock. Nabablock tayo doon eh. Sa ano na yon, sa aspeto na yon. The other thing that I can provide as a tip, we can also use here yung ating backward design process. Okay, malilito doon ha. Once we have these learning outcomes, no? Identify na natin yan for the lesson. Again, we are writing for the module. Isulat na natin ito kung paano tayo mag-a-assess. 'Di ba? Paano tayo mag-a-assess? Again, itong lahat ng ito ay naka-anchor or naka-align doon sa for the core subject area, learning outcomes for the core subject area, and for the whole program learning outcomes. Again. So, iterative yung process eh. Iterative yung process. Lagi nating i-check kung tayo ba ay naka-align pa. So, learning outcomes, assessment, content, learning activities, kailangan lahat yan, iterative yung process natin, pabalik-balik tayo just to make sure that they are aligned. At this point, I also want to introduce one other aspect or one other component which we are using at UPOU when we are developing materials. Aside from the writer is the expert in the field, in that particular area. Meron pa kaming tinatawag na subject matter specialist who will review the content. We'll review the content, the technical content, etc. Tama ba? Kasi sometimes kapag ka nagsusulat tayo, when we are writing something, meron tayong hindi na isusulat, which will make the final output probably not exactly technically correct. Diba? May mga naiiwan tayo. Another pair of eyes through the subject matter specialist can call our attention. They can call our attention. The other member of the course development team is the instructional designer. The instructional designer is the one who will also look at the perfect alignment of our assessment, learning outcomes, content, learning activities, and the alignment of all these things to the bigger learning outcomes or goal. So yun, very, very important yung role ng tatlo na yun. Very important yung role ng tatlo na yun. So we have the expert as the writer, another expert as the subject matter specialist who will review the content, the instructional designer who will check the alignment of all the elements in our module, and if necessary, and depending on the learning outcomes, depending on what we want our reviewees to achieve at the end of each lesson, there can also be the media specialist. So titingnan nyo rin, meron bang ganito na may mga kailangan bang i-demo, skills na kailangang matutunan as a preparation for the licensure exam. Then probably, baka may mga demo skills na kailangan i-demo, so you may be needing video materials. So again, the learning outcomes should be able to determine what format will be your lessons. Okay? So yan, structuring our module. Again, this is a sample module. So kanina pinakita ko yung paano chinank yung lesson in the course that I am teaching. So this is now the module. So I have here module 1 guide, corporate social responsibility, meanings, and development of practice. So yan yun. So I have here the module objective. So the course is all about CSR communication. So you cannot communicate something which you don't know. So as a starter, we will take a look at the definitions as stated in the literature of what corporate social responsibility is. Pero dito, may nilagay ako dito. Your company or organization donated relief goods to the victims of the earthquake in Bohol and Typhoon Yolanda in the Visayas region. Can you claim it as your company CSR? So, connect to what is known. Ito, alam nila to. Nangyari to. When I was writing it, ito yung mga nangyayari noon. So, I connected our discussion to what is known or what was known at that time. So, I gained their attention, piqued their interest on what we will be discussing. Because we will be talking about the meaning and the development of practice, especially in the context of the Philippines. So I gained their attention through this, and then I stated here what we will be the learning outcome after the lesson. So you should be able to describe what CSR is and distinguish it from other forms and activities of the company or organization. So ito yung simula ng module for this particular lesson. Okay? So again, we go back to these 9 events of instruction, but I want to focus now on how we are going to present the content, kasi itong iba madali na to di ba? Alam na natin yung pag-get ng attention, paggawa ng learning outcomes, pagsusulat ng learning outcomes, pwede tayong bumalik na sa learning outcomes generator, etc. simulate recall of prior learning, alam na natin yan. So how are we now going to present the content? Ito na yung input din natin as the expert in the field. And of course, another one is the development or developing the learning activity. So for the next slides, for the next part of the discussion, I will be focusing on these two aspects. So are there questions at this point? Before I go to the preparation of the content or the lesson proper? Meron po ba kayong katanungan ngayon? Wala naman akong nakikita dito sa ating chat box. Okay, except for the request of the recording, yes, you will have that. So again, kung meron po kayong naiisip na tanong, kasi baka makalimutan ninyo yung mga tanong natin, isulat nyo lang po dito sa ating although may Q&A, ano rin pala tayo rito, ano? May Q&A rin tayo rito. So you can also write it there, and then I will go back to discussing or answering your questions after after my presentation. So, okay, so far wala pa. Sige. Okay, so balik ako doon sa pag-share ng slides ko. Okay, so punta na tayo doon sa lesson proper. Okay. So saan manggagaling yung lesson proper natin? Diba? Saan natin kukuhanin yan? So these are some of our sources, possible sources. And the most usual source of the lesson is tayo. Kasi tayo nga yung eksperto dyan eh. So it is a teacher-created content. Teacher-created content. And usually, ito yung mga lectures natin, PowerPoint natin, ganyan kapag ka nagtuturo tayo. And usually, this is already a summary from the different reference materials, but then we also integrate our own interpretation and contextualization. Diba? Ini-input na natin yung expertise natin. Binasa natin kay ganitong author, kinuha natin kay ganitong expert, and then pinagsasama natin, and then we frame this information probably into a manner na mas madaling maintindihan, may maha-highlight tayo because ito yung nire-require, this is what is being required in our learning outcomes. Okay? So yun yung usual. Kung ano yung nile-lecture natin, ano yung tinuturo natin. The other source, it can be a book chapter. Meron tayong mga reference materials. Pwede nating sabihin na, for this particular lesson, basahin nyo ito. It can be a handout lifted from a reference material, or pwedeng may mga pinagsama-sama tayong mga na gusto nating basahin nila. Yung hindi tayo yung nag-summarize. Pero gusto natin basahin nila from the original authors. Diba? From the original authors, basahin nyo. Kasi yung sa akin is just a summary. It just highlights what you can find, what you can read in that particular material. So, pwedeng doon din manggaling. It can be a video material. Recorded, we record it, or others recorded it, or from the internet. It can be a podcast. Or it can be an online course. It can be an online course. Like a massive open online course. Libre, walang babayaran. And I think at this point, there are so many open online courses which you can probably look into and can provide content to our reviewees. So it can be, I'm sure may mga maidadagdag pa kayo dito, may mga maia-add pa kayo dito. Which are your usual sources of content when you are teaching a particular lesson? So, you can add to the list. Ito lang yung mga naisip ko. These are the usual sources of content lesson that I use in my classes, in the courses that I am teaching. Pero yung sa inyo, it is possible na meron pa kayong mga content or sources ng content which you can add to this list. Again, be mindful of our learning outcomes pagpipili na tayo noong content natin for the lesson. Okay? So, yan. sources of the lesson, the content that we will put in our module. Okay. So this is a sample content. Again, I go back to my course, CSR communication. So in the module that I wrote, meron na akong inilagay na konting content. So halimbawa dito, I already put there the definition. This is part of module 1. Meanings or definitions, the development of practice. So, meron na akong inilagay just to provide the initial overview to my students. So, I put there my sources, my source where I got this. I enclose it in the box just to show that this is not my original. This is not from me. I lifted it from someone else's work. Okay? But at the same time, I pointed them to other sources of the lesson. So I have here video materials, puro pala ito, except for this one, which is a text material. Most of the materials I provided to them in terms of the content, in terms of the lesson, are in the video format. So yan yun. Para maintindihan nila, makita nila yung mga specific cases. So like for instance, this one, McDonald's Corporate Social Responsibility Making Progress. So may mga ganyan na they can also consider. So hindi lang yung galing sa akin yung kanilang nakikita. So content lesson, this is part of the module, but I also included this list so that they can look at other sources of the content. Okay? But in terms of determining, halimbawa, wala na silang oras talagang wala silang oras na i-view itong mga materials na to. At least meron silang basic concepts dito na madali nilang mababasa. Andito na yan. Now, if they want to know more, pupuntahan nila itong mga to. Because these are now specific cases. Okay, so McDonald's, Starbucks, diba? Itong isa is Unilever. So may mga cases na silang mababasa. But in terms of what they should know, I already put it as part of the module. Okay? So, still on the lesson, I put here, I want to focus more on the teacher-created content. Yung tayo, yung ating ibinibigay sa mga estudyante. So, in remote instruction, the teacher-created content can be written in the text format. So just like the example that I have shown in the previous slide, kinuha ko sa isang reference, inilagay ko doon, because this is their should know information as related to the learning outcome for that particular lesson. Or it can be a live lecture which we can deliver through the synchronous session. Yun yung konteksto natin ngayon, no? Remote instruction tayo. So, pwede tayo magkaroon ng synchronous session at yon ang i-lecture natin. I-lecture natin kapag ka-synchronous session. Para lang tayong nasa klase. Diba? Pero instead in a classroom, nasa Zoom space tayo or Google Meet or whatever platform that you usually have. But then, of course, we can also record. We can record our lectures and provide them to our students, especially if our students are challenged by their internet connectivity. Kung medyo mahirap silang mag-connect or nahihirapan silang mag-attend doon sa mga synchronous sessions natin, then we can also record our video and provide the recorded materials to them. So like what I'm doing now in my courses. So ngayon, I hold synchronous sessions. I am taking advantage that the university is subscribing to Zoom accounts. So may mga individual accounts kami ngayon. So I have my personal account, but that is a free account which is limited to 40 minutes. So yun yung ginagamit ko before. Ngayon, since the university is subscribing to a Zoom account na meron nakaka-access kami, nagagamit namin. So I now hold synchronous session with my students para magkaroon din sila ng, iba-iba yung feeling daw nila pag nakikita nila, nakaka-discuss sila, ganun. But I'm not lecturing in those sessions. But what I'm doing is to record all sessions that we are doing, because attendance to the synchronous session is not required. So ina-upload ko yun doon sa course site namin, and kung hindi ka naka-attend, then pwede mo na lang pakinggan or i-view yung nangyaring discussion. So that is something that we can also consider when we design. Kung ayaw nating isulat yung input natin, yung lesson, di i-record natin yung lecture natin at isama natin doon sa course package. So yung course package natin will not just be a printed book like this one, pero magkakaroon siya probably USB, 'di ba? Sasamahan natin yung ibibigay natin or which we will make available to our reviewees. Siguro ang ano ko lang dito, ang something which can probably explain why we also recommend something like that, and why our students or reviewees would learn more if they are listening to us, is because of the senses, the senses involved, di ba? Ang sabi nila, mas maraming sense ang involved, mas madaling matutunan ang particular concept compared to when we are just reading something. Kasi dito, mata lang natin yung gumagana. Pero kapag ka meron tayong naririnig, nakikita, because there's the PowerPoint material as well, mas madali nilang natututunan yung concept. Added to that, nakikita pa nila tayo, nakikita nila yung pag-explain natin, expression natin, pagtaas, pagbaba ng boses natin, di ba? And that will also put emphasis to the concept that we want our reviewees to learn. So ito yung mga pwede nating gawin again in terms of providing content to the module assigned to us to develop. So just an additional information. When we so decide to record our videos, yung mga lectures natin, no? Parang magandang mag-record. So ano ba yung mga kailangan natin? What are the tools that we will need? First is, saan tayo magre-record? Anong mga tools, anong platforms yung gagamitin natin? So here, I recommend open source digital platforms like Zoom. Pwede kang mag-record ng lecture mo using Zoom, or you can also use your smartphone cameras. May tripod ka, meron kang ring light, and these things are now, hindi naman siya ganun ka-expensive. In my case, I have the ring light. And there was one instance that I was asked by Inutech to record something, and then what they required was for me to use my smartphone. Kasi if I will record that, according to them and based on their experience, if I will record my lecture using a Zoom platform like the one that we are using now, challenging daw sa kanila ang mag-edit. Sabi nila, it's so challenging. So well, ang nangyari naman sa part ko, the challenge was in terms of the setup. Kasi kailangan ko ng tripod na doon ko ilalagay yung aking smartphone and set it up in such a way na makukuha niya yung ng maganda yung setup, yung hindi putol yung ulo ko or hindi ako nasa isang tabi lang, etc. So yun naman yung naging challenge sa akin aside from setting up the ring light. So kailangan naka-set up din siya ng maganda. Ganon. And then very particular din sila sa background. Ganyan na kailangan ganito yung background. Pati sa suot, very particular sila. So may mga ganong mga ano. But if we are just recording for our classes for instance, then I think hindi masyadong ganong kalaki yung kadami yung mga requirements. Okay? So like in my case, and this is the third item here, the sharing platform. If we want it to be accessed as well in the offline mode, pwede mong ilagay sa USB at yun yung may make available natin, the thing that we will make available to our reviewees. But we can also consider YouTube channel. In here, I put here as an example my own YouTube channel where I upload my video lectures for my courses. So I record I record these videos using Zoom. The only limitation, kasi ano rin to pangalan niya, open platform din ito in YouTube, and this is associated with my Gmail account. I titled it the Open Academy. And then limited yung video material ko to 15 minutes. Yun lang yung pwede kong i-upload. So kailangan talaga ma-chunk ko din, ma-plan ko yung aking mga video lecture in such a way that it will not exceed 15 minutes. If I can have it in 10 minutes, better. Ganyan. So this is an example. Unfortunately, hindi ko na ito masyado nadagdagan kasi yung mga video na napoproduce ko after this, medyo ang hahaba na. So I use a different platform, sharing platform to my students, yung Google ano na lang, and then I share to them yung link doon sa video material. Kasi minsan may mga 30 minutes na yung mga materials ko kasi full length video, medyo nahihirapan na ako mag-edit. Ganon. So yun. So, recording platform, digital platform, we can use our camera, and then the sharing platform, which can be a YouTube channel or our learning management system, or the Google Drive, or a USB to be distributed to the students if we want them to access the material offline. Okay? So some tips. Again, if we so decide to have our video lectures or our lectures recorded, so these are some tips in creating an engaging video content. So keep it short. Ito yung acronym na pwede nating tandaan. Simple. So short. Ang nakalagay dito sa isang reference material, 7 to 10 minutes. Dito sa isang reference material, 8 to 12 minutes. So the idea is for us not to exceed. I mean, if we can keep it to 10 minutes, better. Right? Interesting. Colors and images para madali nating makukuha yung attention ng mga estudyante natin or mga reviewees natin. Meaningful. Meron ba silang makukuha doon sa video natin? So yung interesting colors, ito yung number 2 dito, ito yung nagko-correspond. Use visuals, images, and animations. So visuals can enhance our presentation and make material more accessible. Kasi may mga visuals siya dyan. And it can also aid in our interpretation and to the understanding of a particular concept. So guided or embedded question. So ito, kasi pag minsan, even if it is just 10 minutes for instance, it will help if we will be embedding questions or we will be asking our students in between. Like for instance, at the middle of a video lecture, meron tayong itatanong sa kanila. We will ask them to do something. Ganyan. Because we will now be facilitating their participation. Hindi lang sila makikinig. Meron silang gagawin even if it is a recorded material. Okay? So, it can also, in terms of quizzes, of assessment, etc., we can also use pre-existing videos, di ba? And the last tip here in this enumeration, in this listing, is be yourself. One of the most important things to do in a video is to be ourselves and act naturally. Hindi naman tayo mga professional, hindi naman tayo mga artista na pag humarap tayo sa camera, hindi tayo nag-stumble or something like that. So it's a natural thing. In the same way that we are doing it when we are giving live lectures, diba? So ganun din, pagka nagre-record tayo, so be natural, be ourselves. So if we go back here dito sa ating simple acronym, so short, interesting with the visuals, colors, etc., meaningful because the students can find value in the video material. It is the input, it is the lesson to what they need to know. Planned, we have to organize it. Kasi nga, if we want to keep it to this 8 to 12 minutes or up to 10 minutes, then we have to plan what exactly is it that we will be saying. And then learning 2 to 3 key takeaways. Kasi hindi na, kanina di ba sinabi ko yung chunking the lesson, 7 plus or minus 2. So, posible na sa isang module, meron tayong dalawa or 3 video materials if we are going to look at the 2 to 3 main key takeaways. Okay, and exciting. So the way we discuss the material, we point them to other materials, other resources which can add. Kasi nga very short lang yung ating discussion in the video, in the recorded video, then we can point them to other resources, links or videos. So this way hindi tutulugan ng mga estudyante yung video natin, 'di ba? Kasi kung masyadong mahaba yan, unless we can produce it in such a way na Netflix type, no? Na kahit magdamag silang hindi matulog, tatapusin nila yung episode, but that is something close to being not possible, being impossible. When we are doing video recorded lectures of our lesson, yun. So we have to consider these steps or tips when we create our own videos and content. Okay? So again, when we think of content, of what we can put in the module that we are developing, we can also consider getting the resources from the internet. Okay? And what we can get there are not just video materials, but we can also get books, etc. Even assessment, pwede nga rin natin kuhanin doon eh. So just a reminder, I put here OER or Open Educational Resources, which means to say that you can use them for free without having to fear about copyright infringement. I put here as a reminder, just because you find it on Google doesn't make it free. So we have to be conscious. We have to be conscious of who owns the copyright of the material that we intend to use. And I think I have also mentioned this in our sessions last year, that we can take advantage of the available materials from the internet through these open educational resources. So I put here, you can seek out or get videos and other interactive content from quality open educational resource providers such as CK-12. So this is more for the basic ed. Merlot, you can also get materials for higher education, OER Commons at all levels. At all levels of education. This one, the OER Commons, is from UNESCO. Now, if you want to search for content to reuse, yung talagang naka-license na siya under Creative Commons, this is the site which you can use. Again, since you will be provided with a copy of my presentation, you can look at all these links, that I am providing you. If you want to search or get materials from the internet, open educational resources from the internet, which you can use as lesson input sources of your content for the module that you are developing. Okay, so again, this one, just to give you a glimpse about the materials that are licensed under Creative Commons. So you just have to look at this different ito mga symbols na nakalagay dito, and then these symbols will tell you how or will guide you how you can use the materials. So different levels yan. And the most restrictive ay itong huli na to. So CC BY, you cannot sell the material that you will produce out of using the same material. No derivative. You cannot chop it into parts and then use the parts. So you have to use it as a whole. So that's the most restrictive. The most permissive, or what you can do so many things out of that material, is this CC BY. You just need to attribute the developer, the writer of that particular material, and you can even sell the output that you will produce out of that material that you will be using. So again, you just look at this. Logo, the CC logo, and then look at these different logos as well, which will guide you on how you will use this material. So all Creative Commons licenses require attribution to the creator. So yun yung ano lang natin. Yung iba, because like right now, especially with my appointment as an OER ambassador for the International Council on Open and Distance Education, we are really advocating. We are really advocating the use and the sharing. So halimbawa, meron kayong ginawa na material, educational material, we also encourage the sharing of the same material under the Creative Commons license. So ano yung hesitation of our fellow educators? Ang ano nila, I will be sharing this for free. Baka naman nakawin, baka naman gamitin ng gamitin. Tapos paano na ako? So the all materials that are licensed under Creative Commons will recognize you, will attribute that material to the writer or to the developer of that material. So what is the advantage? What is the advantage of sharing your materials under this Creative Commons license? The idea or the outcome, shall I say the outcome of that practice is you will be the known expert for a particular field. Kasi hindi mo itinago yung kaalaman mo eh. You shared it. So halimbawa, pag inisip na sino kaya ang eksperto sa animal nutrition, for instance, since you already have shared so many materials on animal nutrition, for instance, then ang mga tao, those who are in the same field, for instance, or those who will be searching for an expert for that particular area, lalabas yung pangalan mo. So you will be the recognized expert. And sabi nga nung ibang mga nakausap natin, when they started sharing their works for free under the Creative Commons license, mas marami daw silang kinita kasi mas maraming kumukuha sa kanila, tapping their services, expertise as consultants, etc. So ganun daw yung nangyari. So ito yung lagi naming sinasabi doon sa our colleagues, our fellow educators who are still hesitating to share their materials under the Creative Commons license. So again, if we are looking for materials which can supplement or yung talaga naghahanap tayo ng pwedeng maglagay ng maggamiting content which we can use as a content for the module that we are writing, then OERs can be one possible consideration. Again, so these are the sources, repositories of the open educational resources which you can look into. So pwede nyo tingnan, pwede kayong mag-search when you are already using or writing your modules. Okay? So tapos na tayo. So nasulat na natin yung content, ano? So nakompleto na natin. May learning na tayo, may learning outcomes na tayo, etc. In the course of our lecture, magpo-provide din tayo ng example kung paano natin i-apply yung mga concepts. So now, ngayon, what we need to design is how can we provide that opportunity for our reviewees to practice and apply the concepts. Natutunan ba nila? So the way to do it, or the way to provide us with that evidence, is through the learning activities that we will design which will contribute to the learning outcomes. Diba? So lagi dapat naka-align doon. So as I mentioned, provide the faculty reviewer, these learning activities will provide us with the evidence or information whether our reviewees have achieved the learning outcomes, and provide them with the opportunity to practice for the licensure exam proper, and provide them as well with the information. Naintindihan ba nila? Bakit hindi ko masagot ito? Bakit nung nagko-quiz ako hindi ko to masagot? 'Di ba? So, baka kailangan balikan ko to, baka lumabas ito dun sa licensure exam hindi ko to masagot. So, at the same time that that the information it's providing us with the evidence kung natutunan ba nila, mismong yung mga individual na nagre-review will also determine kung naintindihan ba nila or natutunan nila yung lesson na i-discuss natin. That's why it is very important that when we design the learning activities, they are very much aligned with the learning outcomes that we have identified for the lesson, for the course subject area, and for the whole program review. Okay? So ano-ano yung mga yon? I put here again as a tip, try to develop the learning activities in such a way that they will simulate the questions in the licensure exam and how they are being asked. Kung kakayanin natin yon, let us try to do that as part of our learning activities. So can this be quizzes, multiple choice questions, even for higher order thinking knowledge level? So syempre, again, it will depend on exactly what knowledge level do we hope to achieve for this particular lesson, for this particular aspect of the subject area. Okay? So this is another example. This is an example of a learning activity. Again, ito yung activity ko do sa module. Na pinakita ko kanina. So here, a reflection on the definition of CSR. So having read the various definitions and thoughts on the practice of CSR, take a deeper look on the programs that your organization is implementing. Are there programs which your organization claims as its CSR? Do you agree? Why or why not? So may ganyan. So post your report in the DF discussion forum. The DF here means discussion forum for activity number 1. So doon ako magbibigay ng feedback sa kanila. Because this is asynchronous activity. So they have to think, they have to reflect, they have to think, they have to write their answer, they have to post it in our course site. So an example of a learning activity. Okay. So in here, pandemic and beyond. So sinulat na natin yung ating mga materials. Gagamitin natin in our review classes during this time of pandemic. Okay? Gamitin natin. Pero pagkatapos ng pandemic, aanhin natin. Anong paggagamitan natin doon sa mga materials natin? Ano aanhin natin yon? Ito bang ginagawa natin ay ngayon lang natin pwedeng gamitin, lalo ngayon may bakuna na, no? We already have vaccines now. And hopefully, we can have limited face-to-face sessions, ganyan, in the coming months. So what will happen? What will happen to these modules that we are that we will develop? Na we exerted so much efforts doing it. So I put here the question, is flip learning a possibility? Okay, is flip learning a possibility? So what exactly is flip learning? I put here partly address the internet connectivity problem, which I think is a problem right now, is a concern right now, and which will continue to be a problem for a longer time. Or we can also consider using the review materials even beyond the pandemic with greater inclusion of reviewees. Alam natin na yung mga nagre-review sa atin, minsan ang iba sa kanila nagtatrabaho na. And chances are, kung nagpa-face-to-face review session na tayo, they will not be able to participate in review classes, right? So, this is the question that I am throwing to you. Is flip learning a possibility now that we are still in the era of pandemic or even after the pandemic? So what exactly is flip learning? So I would like to share this short video material to you. Okay. So I have to access it. But I will stop my sharing here and share this one.
Writing's not that easy,
Okay,
but
so I have
Grammarly
to
can help. This sentence is...
The flipped classroom is a new method of teaching that
Can you hear it? Naririnig nyo kanina? So,
is turning the traditional classroom
Ayan.
on its head. Every day, thousands of teachers deliver the exact same lesson in class to millions of students. Every night, millions of students sit over the exact same homework, trying to figure out how to solve it. The flipped classroom is turning this upside down. Traditionally, students listen to lectures and take tests in class and read textbooks and work on problem sets at home. In flipped teaching, students first study the topic by themselves, typically using video lessons on YouTube, and then apply the knowledge by solving problems and doing practical work in class. Modern schools who flipped their classroom report many benefits. 1. It allows all students to learn at their own pace, as videos can be watched again. 2. It's more efficient, as students enter the classroom prepared to contribute. 3. It enriches the classroom, as more time can be spent on group work and projects. 4. Doing homework in class allows students to help each other, which benefits both the advanced and less advanced learners. Flipping also brings changes for teachers. Traditionally, teachers engage most with the confident students who ask questions. Flipping allows teachers to target the students who really need help, instead of just those who are confident. Also, instead of instructing from the front, teachers guide on the side. This allows them to work more closely with individuals or small groups. Teachers that are not great presenters can use third-party videos to explain the concept and focus on methods of teaching that suit their style, such as project work or experiments. Once video lectures are made available online, teachers don't need to give the same lecture over and over again. Again, they gain more time to focus on the needs of their class. Many scholars also argue that the flipped classroom model promotes equal learning opportunities, as all kids get the same attention when doing their homework. Currently, kids with caring parents, older siblings at home, or expensive private tutors have a clear advantage over those who don't. Let us know what you think. If you were a teacher, tell us if this model will be possible in your classroom. If you were a student, let us know if you would prefer learning in a flipped classroom.
Okay, so wait, I think okay. So I think that's my
Monster Math presents Addition Below 10. Okay, class, let's begin. What is 5 plus 3? We can solve the problem by counting on. We start with the bigger number, 5, and then we count on.
wait lang, I
Six,
have to stop the
7,
video.
8. Well done. Now try this one. What is 4 plus 6? Again, we start with the bigger number, 6. Know the answer? Enter it on Monster Math, where you can make your very own monster avatar and earn pets for the math problems you get right. And parents, a
Okay, so let me go back to, I think that's let's see. Yeah, I think that's yeah, okay, so that's the end. That's the end of my presentation. So we can now discuss your questions. I really allocated more time for discussion, clarifications, questions, so that we can provide you with more practical information that you will need. So I will now stop sharing and look at the questions that you have raised here in our chat box and in our Q&A box. So, okay, so from, ito muna sa chat box yung kukuhanin ko, ano. So from Ma'am Ana Vivandor, how are you going to consider the faculty subject expert when in fact they are here paano to? Faculty subject experts when in fact they are here in this training as participants. We are not allowed to add names, so therefore they were not in this training session. Ma'am Ana, medyo nalito po ako doon sa tanong. ano, ano po ano pong ibig sabihin ninyo? Baka you can can we will you be able to elaborate doon sa tanong niyo po kay Ma'am Ana? Ma'am Ana Bibandor. I think kailangan siyang mabigyan ng access as part of the panelist.
Chansey,
Yes, ma'am.
while waiting for the technical staff to give Ma'am Ana the chance to share, no? I think I know what she means.
Okay.
Well, I saw there. Pwede na po magsalita si Ma'am Ana. Okay, I'll just give the floor to her. Yeah.
Okay, sige. Ma'am Ana.
Ay, ma'am, hello po. Good morning, ma'am.
Opo, ayan. Oo.
Sorry po, ma'am, sa may na-missing po ang word doon. Pero what I mean for that, ma'am, is meron po kaming, dalawa lang po kaming kasama po dito sa crop science from CBSU. There are a lot of our faculty who are also considered as subject experts or specialists. So last time I am asking the group to add the other members so they could be able to attend supposedly our webinar for today. However, we're not allowed. So how could we ask them, ma'am, as what we call them as part or contributor to our module writing? Thank you po.
Ma'am Pilma, baka dapat ikaw sumagot niya.
Yes. Okay, ganito kasi yung Chansey, when SUKAKAP asked the UPLB CAFs to put together this joint project, the idea was really to build the capability of our faculty participants. So when the information was sent to the different SUCs, of course, it would be their administrators who will decide on who will participate. And since it is building the capacity, the capability, it's capability building, so many of the administrators thought that the younger faculty participants would benefit more from the exercise, from the project component activities like this one that we have. Although some SUCs also send names of faculty members who are they're experts already, but some are retirable, some are looking forward to retirement. So we had to we with SUKAKAP Secretariat had to address those faculty participants who retired in the process. So many of the faculty participants that we have are really new faculty participants. Some are even pursuing a graduate work, their MS and their PhD. Okay, so the idea kasi is SUKAKAP and their respective SUCs would want really for these faculty participants to develop that expertise. And this is, an exposure for them. Okay, why can't they add other names? Simply because the faculty participants that we have are the official representatives of these SUCs sent by their administrators, and those faculty participants are the ones officially recognized by the SUKAKAP as attendees, no, as participants to our project. Now, it's not really they cannot add names, no, but we encourage our participants to seek help from their experts. Many of our faculty participants already ask us, can we ask the help of our professor, of Dr. So-and-so? They are the experts in our SUCs. And we said, yes, of course, they are the experts. So you really have to consult with them. And when you were enumerating we have writers, contributors, we have subject matter specialists. They are your subject matter specialists. Kasi at this point, all of you are writers, contributors, and we are building your expertise towards these 6 core subject areas. But we need the help of our experts, so they are our subject matter specialists. We cannot just include them as official participants kasi kayo na yung official participants to this project initiative. But you are not limited to, not consulting with them. Indeed, you can consult with your experts, with your subject matter specialists. Yes.
In fact, pwede nyo silang kuhanin na yung magbibigay din ng video. I mean, they can be the source of your content.
Yeah.
So marami well, what we really suggest like for instance, based on our experience din sa UPOU, yung mga experts talaga yung kinukuhanan namin ng content, and then ginagawa na lang namin ng instructional design. Kami yung nagsasabi sa kanila na paki-discuss nga tong topic na to. Kasi tayo yung nag-train on how we are going to do this in learning outcomes. So sasabihan natin sila na ma'am, sir, pwede po bang pa-discuss itong topic na to but with focus on this thing. Diba? Pwede natin din gawin yon. And then as what Doc Filma has mentioned, they can also be your subject matter specialist. So susulatin ninyo, gagawin ninyo, and then they can also give their review. They can be the ones to review the material, diba? At pwede sila magsabi na ito, ganyan, diba? Pwede sila magbigay ng ganong opinion. So you can also involve them, and you can also make use of their expertise. So pwede po ma'am, pwede po. Ito pong training na to na ginagawa natin ngayon, hindi po ibig sabihin nito na limited sa inyo yung pagsusulat o pagde-develop ng modules na gagawin. Well, kung ako nga alam niyo kung ako kayo, you can even conduct your own training session sa inyong mga para kayong mga trainers, then you can echo this training doon sa inyong mga kasamahan. I mean, it will not just be useful for the review session, it can also be useful for developing
the course.
Yeah. That you are teaching your respective universities. So ganun po natin siya pwedeng gamitin. So wala pong problema doon.
Chancy, we also reminded our faculty participants kasi some have asked us, can we just make use of the materials developed by the experts daw from their SUCs? My feeling kasi is ako sumagot talaga ako ng no. Because madi-defeat yung purpose natin for our faculty participants to develop the writing skills. And ito yung purpose. That's why we are exposing you to these activities. We also want you to develop yung writing skills. It's good nga that our chancellor reiterated na we all have experience developing the course pack and we really know the challenges. So ito parang nagre-review ulit tayo na did I do it right, or how can I improve on the course packs while I am working on the review materials. So kaya we would remind them that no, do not pick it up, do not pick up the materials from your experts kasi output nila yon. Do something on your own. But consult them on the contents of what you have developed. Kasi madi-defeat yung purpose natin na matuto kayong mag-develop ng mga review materials at saka you develop also your own for your respective courses.
Yeah. Okay, so meron pa ditong isa, kay Sir Aurelio, in making a module, is there a specific number of references required or 5? Actually, sir, we really, I really don't prescribe the number of references per module. Kasi nga, it will depend on what you will discuss. Again, in choosing your reference materials, I suggest na ano ba yung must read? Ano yung kailangan nila talagang basahin? Ano yung kailangan nila talagang intindihin? Ganyan. So saan nila makikita yung concept na kailangan nilang intindihan? Saan nila makikita yon? Diba? So, kasi if we will provide so many, baka lalong malito yung mga yan, hindi nila malaman kung sa sila. Ako halimbawa, nagsasabi ako, if I have several materials, I specify, halimbawa, for this particular book, read chapter. Ganon. For this particular video material, note from this minute to that minute. So ini-specify ko kung saan sila dapat mag-focus talaga ng attention. If I need to provide many reference materials, kailangan naka-specify alin doon na kanilang dapat intindihan kasi yun yung magpo-provide sa kanila ng content for them to learn the concept. So yun po, Sir Aurelio. Sabi ni Ma'am Maria Victoria, yung Doodly, you have to pay something kasi it's not a free. Although meron yata silang trial parang ganon before you subscribe. Ma'am, meron naman pong mga I always advocate for libre. So like yung Screenomatic, yun din, kahit nga yung cellphone natin kung kakayanin kaya nga lang syempre we have to really set it up in such a way na maibibigay natin yung lahat, madidiscuss natin yung lahat ng pwede nating i-discuss. So yun, so again yung Zoom which is free for the 40 minutes, yung free account nila. Yun nga lang, syempre, dun sa Doodly, I think you can do more in terms of providing more graphics, etc. Ganon. From one of the participants, general template for the study guide. Yeah, I can probably provide. Although you can also draw it from my presentation, and then I can also provide some sample materials to you. Okay. Yeah. So, sige, tingnan ko muna yung I stop dun sa kay Ma'am or Sir Johnny. Tingnan ko muna yung sa Q&A. From Ma'am Lucila Rocha, pwede pong i-share yung na-develop ng UP as guide po. Ma'am, alin po yung, which specific one na na-develop ng UP? Alin po kaya doon? Can you have a follow-up to this question? Hi ma'am, from Dimsu, Sir Julius. Can you provide us tips on how to avoid the tendency of overloading information in writing lesson contents? Sir Julius, yun nga po, we should be guided by the learning outcomes so we can determine which are the information that they should know and which are the ones that are nice to know. So yun po, always be guided by the learning outcomes. And the level of knowledge which based on the learning outcomes natin. So yun po yung magiging guide natin. Kasi nga po, talagang lalo tayo ang tendency natin maglagay ng mga kasi nga experts tayo 'di ba? So may tendency talaga tayo na magsulat ng napakadami para tayo nagsusulat ng libro. So always be guided by the learning outcomes, and that learning outcome should be anchored to the general assessment. Sabi kay Ma'am Ruth, in crop science, ano ba ang sustainable crop production module?
Or unit.
Ano po yan? Palagay ko isang buong unit yan. Kasi kasi ang when you talk of sustainability, napakadami pumapasok diyan So what are the elements of a sustainable crop production? So baka isang unit yan, and then ang unit natin i-breakdown mo. Depende on how you define sustainable crop production. Siguro yun na lang. How you define sustainable crop production, and then what exactly is it that you want them to learn when you think of sustainable crop production or when you talk of sustainable crop production. So you will now be guided whether you will devote unit, which can be several modules, or just one module, if you will just be going to provide them with an overview. Awareness lang. Kung awareness lang ang gusto mo, the components of a sustainable crop production, then posible na module lang yan. Okay? But, kung marami kang gustong i-discuss, halimbawa, ang level mo ay to the application, creation, etc., yung higher order, then probably that particular topic can be one unit with several modules tackling the different components or aspects of sustainable crop production. So, yun po, Ma'am Ruth, ang sagot ko doon sa tanong nyo. I still have some requesting clarification from Ma'am Rocha about yung kanyang tanong about what exactly ang nire-request niya. From Sir or Ma'am Johnny, in developing our review materials, we make modules and test constructions at the end. How about that? Then the reviewers will use those review materials for online reviews. Hindi kaya tama kuha yung question. So you make modules. So susulat ka ng modules. So meron kang gagawin na mga test items. Tama ba? And then you will make these materials available online. Yes. So ano po yung problem? Kasi sinulat niyo na yung review. Yung review questions, yun po ba yung concern niyo, ma'am or sir? Kasi ginawa mo ng available doon sa doon sa material mo yung questions. Kasi pwede mo paghiwalayin yun. Pwede mo paghiwalayin yun. You don't, nailalagay, I mean, learning activities lang yung ilalagay mo and then there is a separate material for your test items. Pwedeng ganon. If the concern is, para yung mga modules ng DepEd, yung binigyan mo ng tanong na naandun din yung sagot. But these are meant to be self-assessment questions. So, again, depende. Anong purpose? Anong purpose noong test items na ibinigay mo? Is it meant to be a self-assessment question or is it meant to be really yung parang summative na ba for the particular lesson or topic? So depende po ma'am, and siguro depende din dun sa what exactly will
Assessment
the concern
questions.
about the questions. Oo. Okay. What about if the faculty participant on this training is the expert in the department? Well, pwede po kayong mag-identify, pwede po kayong mag-identify ng basta ang importante, ang magsusulat ay expert at ang inyong subject matter specialist is another expert in the field. And you can be part of the same institution, the same department usually, 'di ba? Pwede pong ganun. Pwede pong ganun yung gawin ninyo. Okay?
Parang peer review.
Oo.
I remember you mentioned that during your first online lecture, Chansey, that they themselves can, check on each other's work, parang peer review.
Oo. In fact, ang ano nga diyan, alam niyo ang pinaka-importanting process diyan, yung pag-set ninyo ng mga learning outcomes, nakaupo kayo and you do it in a workshop. You will agree on the program learning outcome. You will agree on the core kasi mas maganda yung yung titingnan ninyo ng lahat, and then you will also look at your the learning outcomes that you have set for each module. If that is not possible at this point, then probably an instructional designer can help you in making sure na ang lahat ng ito ay naka-align. Even your assessment. Kasi nga, minsan din tayo mga teachers, we have the tendency na mag-iisip lang tayo ng assessment. Mag-iisip lang tayo ng mga exam questions, etc. Bibigay tayo ng quiz, bibigay tayo ng ganito. Without considering are we aligning it, or is it aligned? Is it aligned with the learning outcome? So another pair of eye can tell us whether naka-align ba siya, or tama ba yung ating assessment na ginawa, or yung ating learning outcome na sinet for the lesson will contribute to the overall learning outcomes. So from the module writer will make their own original content review materials. Okay. No copying from existing
Their review.
oo. Ano po kaya ibig sabihin nito? May existing reviewer. Actually, ang depende rin sa ano ninyo yun eh. Paano bang approach ang gusto nyong gawin? Paano bang approach ang gusto nyong gawin dito? So definitely there are existing materials, but I also think or assume na yung mga nagawa ng mga reviewers before, will also be involved. Some of them will also be involved in the current review session. Or it can be an opportunity for you to examine the existing, revise it in consultation with the original writer. Kasi ngayon, di ba, titingnan nyo uli hindi, although syempre mas madali kung magsusulat ka ng bago. Having all this ganyan. Pero if you still find that material useful, then you can probably just revise it based on the guidelines that kasi baka remember kasi 'di ba before when we were teaching, ayun lang tayo medyo nagiging conscious na sa OBDIs na sinasabi nila. So hindi natin alam, or baka nagbago na yung mga questions dun sa licensure exam, 'di ba? So tingnan natin kung if they are still up to date considering the kinds of questions that are being asked in the licensure exam. So yun, dalawang approach. You can write new ones, or you can revise the existing ones in consultation with the original writers. So yun po yung doon. Yun yung two approaches na pwede nyong gawin. Kung alin po yung mas magiging madali at magiging appropriate sa konteksto ninyo. Ganon.
Chancy,
Yes, ma'am.
I think also one of the issues among our faculty participants, and maybe us too in UPLB, is that there are really existing materials, review materials already, and that here we are assisting the SUK-AKAP to develop review materials that would be used by all of the SUCs in their licensure review exam review. And many of the concepts and the principles pare-pareho naman kasi, di ba? Yung if we discuss communication, for example, if we discuss the elements of communication, we really go back to the SMCRE. So hindi po pwede na meron tayong different communication elements. So doon sa mga review materials na ginagamit na natin, there are really a discussion already, an enumeration of the different elements of communication. And so if we make our review materials for the SUC, for the SUK-AKAP, of course, we would have the same concepts, the same definitions. Hindi tayo lalayo doon sa mga conceptualization ng mga na yan, words na yan, and we would have the same philosophy, we would be discussing the same principles. But so I don't think meron naman tayong bino-violate doon na any protection of sort, Chancy, di ba? Kasi if we properly acknowledge naman, di ba, where we got the information, not really cited from the review material prepared by, no, because that review material also got that information from the expert, di ba, Chancy? So we can also do the same. I can cite Berlo, I can cite all those luminaries, those experts in the field of communication and have the same set of information. Di po ba, Chansey?
Yes, yes. Ang importante lang doon is properly citing. Properly citing all your references so that it will not appear that you are claiming it. You are claiming it as your own. So like for example, when we define development communication, for instance, then we can say Quebral definition, ganyan-ganyan, di ba? And you can find it in so many reference material. That particular definition. What will be our added value? Yun yung tanong natin. What will be, okay, so you have used these different materials, different references. What will be the added value that you are the ones doing it? Yun yung tanong ngayon. The added value is how you will frame these inputs. Paano mo siya ituturo? Saan ang highlight mo? Kasi you will be guided by the learning outcomes. 'Di ba? Maari yung iba is just for information. Pero ikaw, what exactly do you wish to achieve when you define communication, for instance? Sabi kanina ni Doc Filma, di syempre I will always go back to Berlo, SMCR. Dagdagan mo ng E kung gusto mo. Diba? If you want to be critical, if it's just for information purposes, what are the components of a communication process? 'Di ba? So aanuhin mo 'yan. SMCR plus E. Sabihin mo lang ganyan according to Berlo. But if you want to be critical about it in saying na what exactly will be the contribution of this particular element when you are communicating for agriculture, for instance. So may konting critical because that is what is being required from you based on the learning outcomes. Kasi it's not just enough to list or identify the components of a communication process. Diba? Hindi lang yun ang gusto mo mangyari eh. Ang gusto mo, makapaggawa sila ng isang programa ng communication for agriculture. Extension, for instance, ano ang value ng SMCR sa isang extension worker? So you will be citing Berlo, but the application of Berlo's model of communication to an agricultural extension worker is different.
Different.
That will be the added value of your material in the context of the review. So you will still be citing the same. Sabi nga, classic yan eh, classic. Hindi ka makakapagturo ng communication pag hindi mo sinite si Berlo. Diba? Oo. Kaya kung gusto mo mag-introduce ng news, ng noise, ay di sama mo na yung kay si telephone, yung may noise element na model. Diba?
Shannon. Shannon and Weaver.
Kung gusto mo naman na mag-introduce nung yung agreement, yung agreement si Kincaid, di ba? So iba-iba siya, iba-iba yung gusto mo. Kasi di ba when you communicate, halimbawa, sabihin mo na, gusto ko ma-achieve, ito yung purpose ko ng communication, ma-achieve ang agreement at the end of the communication process. O edi si Kincaid na yung isa-cite mo. But this, you can find all these things, the Kincaid's model, si Shannon and Weaver, etc. You can find this in almost so many reference materials about communication. But what will make your material different from these other materials? It's how you will use that particular information in the context of your purpose, in the context of your learning outcome. Ganon. So yun yung pagkakaiba. But again, remember to always cite your references properly. So if you want to go back to APA, APA bang ginagamit ninyo? So you go back to APA style book, oo. Para you will be guided on how to cite your references na ano. But then again, yun nga, especially if you will be using pictures, ganyan, graphics, illustrations, ipa-illustrate nyo na para hindi kayo magka-problema sa copyright or baka mas mahirapan pa tayo mag-request ng permission to use ng mga yon. So, kung ito lang yung kailangan mo, bahay ng poultry, for instance, gusto mong ipakita kasi tinatanong yan, tama ba kung ganito yung bahay? Yes, no, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Pa-illustrate mo na lang. Para hindi ka, or kung may makikita kang open access, open source material, yun yung gamitin mo. para hindi ka na magbabayad, etc. Ganun. For this. Meron dito, anonymous attendee, some updated reference or links that could help us drafting our modules. Ano po, Doc Phil, baka sa'yo to.
Alin, hindi ko makita yung ano niya. Ano sabi niya, Chansey?
Sa Q&A na yung kay anonymous attendee, sabi niya, can you
Share some updated references that could help us in, okay. Okay. Yes, Chansey, let me answer that question. No? Well, first, we want our faculty participants to first learn how to look for references, good reference materials. The initial outputs that we saw previously made use of, a commercial internet sites like Wikipedia and those corporate sites. So we encourage our faculty participants that when you write, it's all right to make use of internet sites, but make use of those legit sites. Site ebooks or journal articles. So we first want our faculty participants to learn how to source good reference materials. But of course, at the end, we will provide them, we will share with them our own materials. Kasi minsan, malay nyo, na-pick up nyo na pala, na-pick up nyo na when you were writing. So we don't need to share that material anymore kasi na-discover nyo na kung saan nyo hahanapin. We are trying to avoid kasi Chansey sort of spoon feeding, give them everything. Eto na yung mga materials, bahala na kayo. So it's also part of the exposure, part of the training they also learn how to look for good materials given that you have also provided these open education resources and all of those legitimate sites. So maganda na matuto sila na i-explore yung mga sites na yon, and for all they know baka hindi lang dito sa exercise natin na writing nila magagamit yon, and magagamit nila sa class, ito magagamit ko ito sa klase ko. But of course, yes, we will share with you any materials that we have.
Okay. I think ikaw din ang sasagot dito sa from Ma'am Ana uli, and from Ma'am or Sir Johnny. If the respective topic for crop science will be divided to the different LEIRT participants, or do we have to write the modules by SUC representative? So, ito nasa system na to ng development ninyo ng material. Question ni Ma'am Ana.
Okay. Sa groups kasi, Chancellor, if you remember, meron nga kaming 6 core subject groups. So, depende na lang sa strategy ng mga experts natin coming from UPLB kung paano nila i-distribute yung mga topics ng crop science, for example, or animal science, or crop protection, soil science, and even ag-econ and ag-extension. So, nasa strategy na nila kasi iba-iba naman yung mga scope and coverage ng mga ito. There are, of course, I'm happy na nabanggit mo yung chunking because it is very important for our faculty participants to learn how to chunk those big topics that we have into smaller modules. So, but of course, yes, the faculty participants in this project, official faculty participants would be the ones to write the different modules.
Okay, yung sumunod, ikaw din yung sumunod.
Alin, Chansey?
How much is the maximum number of items needed in the making of review materials in each area? Ano ba yun?
Maximum number of items?
Is that a question item?
items kaya ito in making review materials? Hindi ko yata na pick
Nagets.
up what what Johnny means by number of items needed. Pero
Ito ba ay
kapag
questions, exam questions? Yung test item na ginagawa? Pero siya dagdag separate one then another set yung test construction. So those faculty assigned as module writer will group. Not necessarily.
oo. Mm-mm.
I don't know. I mean, again, nasa system nyo to eh. Kung paano, yung approach nyo, yung mechanism niyo on how you will write the modules.
Well, kasi the first, when we had the online lecture last year on test construction, Dr. Sumayaw gave them the assignment to formulate at least 2 sample test questions for a particular topic. And we encourage them to do that. And part of what we want to do is make these tests, sample tests as part of the modules, like yung diniscuss mo kanina na merong self-assessment test towards the end of the module. They can use that actually.
Okay.
So that would make your module different from the other review materials that you have been using, kasi you have provided self-assessment questions and, you know, like, how are you doing?
Right. So, yung pala yun. Sige.
Yes, Chansey. Chansey, we don't want to take much of your time, but I would like to take this opportunity to spend the next 5 or 7 minutes to discuss. Sana if you can elaborate a little bit more on the flipped learning, kasi this is really a very big issue among the faculty participants, because what we are developing now, napaka straight nung thinking namin na we are developing online review materials, only to realize that many of our SUCs have internet connectivity problems. So yun nga binanggit mo na kanina na not everybody can go online. So how do we make use of what we are developing now na magagamit din sa tawag mo doon, not really face to face, but you know, hindi online, hindi completely online material, parang ganon. Kasi do we transform what we are doing now as online review materials into something different to satisfy yung flipped learning classroom?
Not
Parang
necessarily.
ganon.
No, actually no. In fact, you can maximize the use of your materials. Maximize the use of your materials. Siguro magdadagdag lang ng mga learning activities at saka ng instruction doon sa mga learners or doon sa mga reviewees. Yung kanina I have shown that video material, which I think can provide you with an overview of what flip learning is all about. And in that material, it already discussed the principle behind flip learning. I'm going to show another material here. I have delivered a lecture on this flip learning. So sabi dito, what exactly the flip classroom or flip learning? It starts with a question: what is the best use of my face-to-face class time? Okay, so and the face-to-face class time here can refer to the classroom, instruction, or can refer to your synchronous session. Diba? So, yun yung tanong. Kaya nagpi-flip learning eh. But at the same time that it can maximize or maximize the opportunity for a face-to-face class or even the synchronous class, ang kagandahan dito is it will also address yung problem natin on connectivity. That's first. And second, it will also make yung review classes more inclusive, 'di ba? Kasi they don't have to be always in the classroom. That is after the pandemic, for instance. And in the event ngayon na nahihirapan din silang mag-internet, yung connectivity nila, then it can also partly address that. Pero the flip learning kasi, let's see what's the next slide. In here, is rethink when students have access to the resources they need the most, because they have their teachers, and they have their classmates with them. Again, it can be in a classroom setting, or it can be in a synchronous session. Mga definitions na lang yan eh. So the idea in flipping the classroom, eto, meron din dito, again, si Bloom's pa rin yung aking reference dito. You flip Bloom. Yung remembering, yung lecture natin, yung lecture na ginagawa natin, and then di ba ngayon ire-record na natin? I'll stop sharing. Di ba ngayon ire-record na natin? If ever na pwede tayong mag-record. Or kung gumagawa tayo ng mga synchronous sessions at doon tayo nagle-lecture, pwede na rin nating i-record yun, di ba? Pwede natin i-record. Habang nagle-lecture ka, click the record and that's it. You already have a lecture material which you conducted in a synchronous session. So, i-keep mo na yon. And then that will now form part of your learning package when you implement the flip learning. Naka-record na. So instead of using your class time or your synchronous session na magle-lecture ka, yun ay gagawin ng estudyante as homework. So bago siya pumunta sa synchronous session or bago siya pumunta sa klase, napanood na niya yung lecture mo. At hindi mo na gagamitin yung oras sa klase sa pagle-lecture. Instead, ang gagawin mo doon sa synchronous session ay learning activities na. Application. And there are many activities which you can develop so that they will be able to apply. Pwede silang magdiskusyon doon, pwede silang magdebate, 'di ba? Para mapakita nyo na naintindihan talaga nila yung sila mismo yung magpapaliwanag o particular concept. Pwede ka rin magbigay ng quiz bago ka magsimula ng synchronous or face-to-face class mo. But the idea is ngayon ay binuo mo na yung module mo, binuo mo na yung content. Yung content na yon, ibibigay mo na sa kanila, pag-aaralan nila bago sila mag-attend ng synchronous session mo. So that's flip learning. Ang sabi nila, yung usual na ginagawa mo sa klase, ay gagawin mo assignment, at yung assignment, which is the application of the concepts. Di ba ngayon, pagka nagpapagawa tayo ng assignment sa mga estudyante natin, yun yung application ng concept. Di ba? Okay, you do this, you do that, which is the application of what we discuss in the class. Yung application na yun, sa klase mo na gagawin. Nakita mo pa na sila talaga yung gumagawa. Di ba? Nakita mo pa. Instead na assignment na sila ba talaga yung gumawa, di natin alam, di ba? Pinagawa lang ba nila? Pero kung nakikita natin na ginagawa nila, pinapakita nila, dinidiscuss nila sa klase, sa harap nating lahat, nalalaman mo na sila talaga yung natuto at sila talaga yung gumawa ng assignment mo. So, yun yung tinawag nila na flip. Pati si Bloom, pinlip natin. Such that the lower order thinking of remembering, understanding ay ginagawa as assignment. Yung pag-intindi sa lesson, pakikinig sa lecture, pag-watch ng video, ginagawa sa bahay, at yung higher order thinking of applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating ay ginagawa ng face-to-face or during the synchronous session. So yun yung basic concepts of flip learning. Pero yun nga, it will probably require some additional or design of the material para una ma-make sure mo that your students are really watching the video, learning it, etc. So yung learning activities mo will also have to be considered when you design a flip learning mode of instruction. So yun yung tungkol sa flip learning po. Okay?
So much to learn.
Madami yan. Meron pa nga hybrid eh. Yung ang ibang estudyante mo nasa klase, nasa classroom, at yung iba ay online. Pero magkasabay silang nag-a-attend. Tapos pag-group working mo sila, na yung iba ay online, yung iba ay nasa klase. Especially may mga bakuna na or 'di ba yung mga ganon, pwedeng gawin 'yon. So maraming pwedeng application. And as sinasabi nga natin, there's no way that we will go back to the way we've been teaching before the COVID-19 pandemic. The things that we have learned that we've been doing for the past few months, meron tayong dadalhin to transform our classroom instruction. Hindi na katulad ng dati. Hindi na katulad ng dating gagawin natin pagtuturo. Okay, so nakataas ang kamay ni Ma'am Cheryl. Bakit po? Baka may tatanong kay Doc Filma.
Hi, Chancey. Good morning. Hi, Beshi Films.
Yes.
Nakita ko kasi yung sa isang Q&A, yung sa, pero nasagot na ni Miss Claire eh. Yung tungkol sa groupings. So, we will be releasing for the, especially for the crop protection, we'll be releasing by next week yung groupings nila and assigned topics.
Okay.
Okay.
Yung isang question lang dito, Chancey, ay question po with regards to the practice questions we will be preparing. Since the board exam is multiple type questions, should we prepare all of our assessment questions in the material as multiple choice too? Or are we also encouraged to use other types of questions?
I suggest na multiple question, pero hindi naman ibig sabihin na multiple question ay nasa remembering and recall ka lang. 'Di ba? Pwede tayong magawa ng multiple choice question that will also require the students, the individuals, to do some analysis, 'di ba? Even problem solving, 'di ba? Baway sa soil science ba yun, yung nagko-compute tayo ng mga fertilizer na i-apply, mga et cetera. Yan. Oo, na may mga problem solving. Tapos pipiliin mo lang yung tamang sagot. So multiple choice pa rin siya. Pero hindi recall lang, hindi recall or remembering lang yung knowledge level mo. Kundi kailangan maintindihan mo yung concept, kailangan maintindihan mo paano mag-solve nitong mga problems na to.
Yeah.
Lahat na yon i-apply mo before you can arrive at doon sa tamang sagot. Lalo kung ang lalapit ng mga options, 'di ba? Talagang pag-iisipan mo mabuti at kailangan tama ang solusyon mo bago mo So, pa-practicein din natin sila doon sa ganung pag-apply para ma-arrive at nila kasi yun yung skills and knowledge na kailangan. Pero the way they will answer the question, kasi nga ganun yung licensure exam, we can also do it that way para masanay din sila at masanay silang malito. Masanay silang nakakalito talaga. I mean, di ba? I mean, nandun, pag minsan, sige na nga, kung ano yung pinakamalapit or mag-mini-mini mo ka na lang. Ganun. Pero, that will now medyo jeopardize yung review natin and also yung assurance natin na in a way ma-increase yung chances na makapasa sila dun sa licensure exam, bababa kung hindi natin ituturo yung skills na yun sa kanila. Yung knowledge and skills na yun. Mag-analyze, di ba? Bawa, pinakitahan sila ng dalawang illustration doon sa exam material. Which is the correct housing type for a poultry broiler, for instance. Ganyan. Tapos ang lalapit nila, kung hindi mo alam yon, kung hindi mo alam yung mga bagay na yon, hindi mo rin masasagot ng tama, even if it is a multiple choice question. So, mahirap gawin yon. I know, mahirap gawin yon. For us na magko-construct ng mga questions, mahirap gawin yon. But it will provide that kind of assessment and practice for our reviewees, then I suggest that we do it. I highly recommend that we do it. Ganun. Para ma-practice din sila. Tsaka para maintindihan natin, natutunan ba nila kung ganun ang klase ng question na ibinibigay sa licensure exam. So, ang sagot ko po, ma'am, doon ay yes. Pero yun nga, sa pag-construct natin, isipin natin anong knowledge level yung hinihingi for them to arrive at the answer, at the correct answer.
Okay, so Chancey, I will just answer one last question, no? Medyo may doubt si Anonymous, bakit po hindi allowed na malaman ng updated links or references from you? Whereas you are here to help us po, di ba? Para po sana sure ang references namin. As I mentioned earlier, Anonymous attendee, we are going to share references with you, with all the faculty participants. Ang gusto lang naman natin is for you to learn how to source other reference materials on your own muna. And then along the way, we will, guide you and help you in sourcing out other references. We will tell you, don't use this kasi mukhang fly-by-night na website itong ginamit mo, or don't use this kasi we would like to avoid itong mga corporate sites like Wikipedia and all those sorts. So exposure yun sa inyo to learn how to make use of legit sites. Okay, so we are really here to help you, and we are indeed helping you by providing you that opportunity to look for your own reference materials. Malay mo, hihingin din namin si AU later on, oy maganda yan, i-share mo din sa akin, di ba?
Actually, I was about to say that, na yung sharing, alam niyo yun, yung, kung ang bawat isa ay magko-contribute halimbawa ng list ninyo ng references, ano yan kasi for all we know, hindi nila nakita yan. Hindi nakita ng iba yan. Tapos nakita mo yung reference na yan, then na-share mo din. So hindi lang isa yung source natin. Dito sa mga ganitong bagay, talaga sharing is caring. Sharing is caring. And then kasi nga malawak yung pwede nating pagkuhanan ng mga references natin. So kung ang bawat expert ay maghahanap ng material and then will share it, I'm sure you will have and then hindi lang dito sa review classes ninyo pwedeng gamitin, even in teaching your courses pwede nyo nang gamitin yun. So aside from the knowledge and skills of doing it, yung the sharing aspect that you will be you will know what others have searched, what others have stumbled, yung mga nuggets na yan, ng mga references ay maganda po yun na gawin natin. Let's do it. Let's try to ano nga yung sabi sa community pantry, mag-contribute ayon sa kakayanan. Oo, 'di ba?
Kumuha ng kung ano lang ang kailangan.
Pero yung mag-contribute kasi we all have that capability to look for materials. We all have that capability to look for materials. At ako nga minsan, alam nyo, sa mga klase ko, one of the activities that I usually ask them my students so that they can evaluate, yung magpapa-book review ako sa kanila. Magpapa-book review. And ako na-amaze ako dun sa mga libro na nakikita nila. Sometimes yung mga books na hindi ko nakikita. I mean, pero sila kasi they have all the time to look for references. 'Di ba? Sabi ko, "Oy, ang ganda nitong book na to." And there was one instance na I was contacted by the author mismo. Kasi in-upload ng estudyante ko yung result ng kanyang book review. Nakita ng author, foreigner yung na yun. And then my student was asked, why are you reviewing this publication? It's about technology and education. And then my student said, kasi po class requirement po namin. I was contacted by the author, and then we exchanged. And I think there was one instance that I asked that particular author to be a resource person in my class. In one session, pinagsalita ko siya doon. Diba? So it widens your network as well. At nai-expose ka to different sources of content. Ganon. So
right.
let's have our own list. Let's have our own list and then let's share.
Yes. Okay, so I think much of the questions, Chansey, that have been raised were addressed by the individual subject matter specialists na from UPLB, so I won't go to that anymore. Okay, we already asked you to go over time, so sorry for that. So if there are no more questions, parang may humahabol ka pa. Graduates are asking if you join the review among SUCs. Ano kaya yung graduates are asking if you join the review among SUCs. Okay, maybe we will discuss that in one of our coaching sessions. Okay. Chancellor, on behalf of our Dean, Dr. Pid Zagbisit, who unfortunately was not able to join us this morning kasi meron pang isang simultaneous na workshop, I think future thinking something, and and my co-coordinator Doc Bambi is there as well. So I'm thankful also that although the other directors are required to attend that, they still made multitasking by opening up another
Yeah.
gadget just to listen to your online lecture this morning and join us at the same time. So thank you very much again, and I hope hindi ka magsasawa if we again call you back kasi we might be encountering more learning issues naman ito with our faculty participants if they feel they would need for added knowledge and skills on how to really enhance their capability kasi ito naman yung purpose ng ating joint project with SUKAKAP. So maybe that would come out later on as we go about our coaching sessions with them. So again, on behalf of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, on behalf of all the subject matter specialists, the PMTs, and the technical staff who have always been there helping us, and all the faculty participants present this morning, thank you very much, Chancellor, for that wonderful morning, very informative, very educational lecture.
Yes, thank you very much, Den. Thank you very much for the active participation. Thanks, Doc Filma, the rest of the team. Please relay, extend my regards to Dean Pids. Hindi pa tagal na kami hindi nakikita. And again, of course, if there are other opportunities in the future na makakatulong din sa inyong initiative, then just let me know and titingnan natin. Basta kakayanin ng schedule.
Schedule, yes. That's why I always tell them na what if we need anything and we are going to invite Chancellor Mel, we have to give her enough time kasi titingnan niya pa yung schedule niya kung ano.
Yes, ganun po.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Po. So maraming salamat. Thank you for the participation. I wish you all, good luck. Good luck dito sa ginagawa ninyo. And syempre, let's all stay safe. Kung meron ng bakuna, magpabakuna na po tayo para makapag face-to-face na po tayo. So, Doc, maraming salamat.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much again, Doc. Chancey Mel, have a nice day. And to all faculty participants, please do not forget, may instruction ata si technical on the evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you.